Live from the mist-enshrouded mountaintop fortress that is X and Y Communications headquarters, you're listening to the world-famous Mountaintop Podcast. And now, here's your host, Scott McKay.
Greetings, gentlemen, and welcome to yet again another episode of the world-famous Mountaintop Podcast. I am your host, Scott McKay, at Scott McKay on YouTube, Twitter, just about every major social media source out there, except for Instagram, where I'm Real Scott McKay. Hey, listen, guys, if you haven't checked out the YouTube channel lately, we're doing great things there. We're also doing super great things, if you will, over at the Facebook group, which is the Mountaintop Summit. As always, the website is mountaintoppodcast.com. Easy to remember. Now, listen, guys, we're going to shift gears and do a different kind of show today. It's a show that I'm really intrigued about. The publicist for my guest today got in contact with me and said, hey, you want to do a show about this particular topic? And I said, wow, that's going to be a hot potato for a lot of guys, but sure, let's tackle it, see where it goes. The topic is alcohol worth it? And we're not talking like rubbing alcohol when you get a little cut or scrape. We're talking about the real thing. We're talking about beer, wine, whiskey, all those things that we as men tend to love, but which can also kill us. And my guest is named Ruari Fairbairns. He was very careful to tell me that his first name rhymes with brewery, which is somehow ironic given the topic we're going to talk about. But I checked this guy out. All around on a global scale, he is the world-class expert to talk about this topic, and I'm proud and happy to welcome to the show Ruari from Scotland, which is a wonderful place to be from, in my own biased opinion. Welcome to the show, man.
Thanks for having me on. A wet place, but yeah, it's a wonderful place to come from. Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure, man. And I was joking with you that I probably personally have the most ethnic name imaginable, being named Scott McKay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anytime someone asks me, what my ethnicity is, I just tell them to say my name slowly to themselves, and it usually clears things up pretty quickly, pretty forthright.
It'd be Scott McKay in Scotland.
Well, actually, that is the history.
Yeah,
it's McKay, but don't ask
anybody.
Plenty
on the Isle of Mull. Plenty.
Oh, yeah, but don't ask anybody in the United States to get that pronunciation correctly.
Yeah, exactly.
So say we settled, but usually I just say we avoid a lot of frustration by simply just going with McKay instead of McKay. But you are absolutely on point. It's not only supposed to be McKay and actually is McKay, it's supposed to be M-A-C instead of M-C.
Yeah, well, there's both. There is both, but yeah, you're right. There's derivatives and change and stuff like that. Much like lots of these surnames have changed over the time, but yeah, ultimately it belongs to a clan in Scotland, and you'll have your own tartan and yeah, all those cool things. Just like I have my own tartan.
Manu Forti, with a strong hand.
Right.
Yeah, that's the McKay clan right there.
All
right, so enough about me. Let's talk about beer. You have an organization called 1 Year No Beer.
Yes.
I'm assuming you don't drink alcohol. Is that a fact?
I do.
You do drink alcohol. So you are personally drinking alcohol and recommending to guys that they go without. Explain.
Yeah, well, I don't entirely recommend. I think alcohol is, and we know that is one of the world's most harmful drugs. We'll talk about that a bit further down the road. It's a very interesting chap from the British government proved that alcohol is by far the world's most harmful drug.
Boris Johnson.
No, well, yeah. Professor David Nutt, actually, who's an amazing chap campaigning for drug reform. But so absolutely, it's no good for you at all. But it is incredibly prevalent all over society, and that's why I think more people actually want to be able to reduce how much they drink. They don't necessarily want to eliminate it. And certainly something that we discovered, which took painful discovery, as it does when you run a business. And we actually found that people are searching for control, sometimes years before they admit to themselves that they need to take a break. And so we can help people change the trajectory of their life or their drinking behavior earlier if we help them focus on control. And we can dive much more into that a bit later, but yeah, that's so for me. I don't usually drink. I rarely drink, and I think that's the best way for people to be. But everyone's different. Everyone is different.
Okay, so basically what you're telling me, if we can distill it, no pun intended, 1 year no beer, as catchy a title as it is, doesn't exactly explain your mission. You're not asking people to go 365 days without one drop of beer.
Okay, so let me explain. 1 year no beer is like the marathon, and not everybody gets up from their desk one day and goes, right, I need to get fit, I'm going to go and run a marathon. Most people start with the 5K. And so we have the 5K, and that
some of us start by getting up off the couch and stretching.
Do some stretching.
Yes.
So we have that. That's the 28-day challenge. And so we start people on the 28-day challenge. And then during the 28-day challenge, we encourage them to go for 90 because they've got momentum and they've got all this stuff. And then during the 90, we encourage them to go for 365. Now, there's some really interesting things in here. So first of all, this is an 8-year-old business, right? We've helped over 100,000 people in 138 countries transform their relationship with alcohol. And, what we originally started with, that people will have a better chance of changing their relationship with alcohol if they take a break from it. Because most people are in a toxic relationship with alcohol. And that, just like a toxic relationship, you don't really see the damage it's doing it to you. You think it's your friend. You think it helps you unwind at the end of the day. You think it helps you calm down stress, meet friends, get laid, be happy, right? So it's got all these associations in your brain. But the truth is, this friend of yours is actually stealing so much more from you than you realize. A, it's robbing a ton of money out your wallet, right? B, it's taking a lot from your mental health. It's a depressant, right? It's literally whittling you down on a daily basis. And people don't realize that for drinking for decades, that they think they're 9 out of 10. They're actually 4 or 5 out of 10 psychologically. And that is the impact of regularly consuming alcohol. So what we saw was when people came on the 1 month journey, the 28, a lot of people didn't really break out of that psychological grip. And actually the sweet spot for many people is around 40 to 60 days. So all of these people all over the world who are doing, a month free challenge, they don't get to that sudden, incredible euphoric moment when you're like, wow, I feel amazing. I've got all my energy back, my productivity back. I feel happier, healthier, fitter, faster, more productive. I'm more connected with my partner, right? All of those feelings which are a byproduct of taking a break from alcohol. Often they didn't get to feel it because they went back to drinking after 30 days. So that's why we then helped encourage people to carry on into the 90 and then really encourage people to carry on not drinking. So, but then there was there was another discovery where we kind of realized we were doing a bit of a disservice to people, and I can talk more about that, but I'll let you say something first.
Well, I would love to hear the disservice you're doing to people by having them quit alcohol.
Yeah.
The first thing that came to mind is if you wanted a bunch of dudes to voluntarily quit drinking beer altogether, just have literally every brewery in the world hire Dylan Mulvaney.
Okay.
Then we're Gucci, right? Everybody will just quit drinking all beer because we'll boycott everything. Yeah. But notwithstanding that, there's a lot to talk about here. I also would throw a few more pebbles on this mountain of reasons why guys should give up alcohol to feel better. First of all, it crushes your T levels. It emasculates you. It does so in part because it's highly inflammatory.
Yeah.
Is alcohol. And of course, inflammation does all sorts of terrible things to us physically. I have given up alcohol for an extended period of time when I went on my keto journey because, keto and alcohol don't peacefully coexist. A lot of people try to pretend, hey, you can have a red wine a day. You can drink a shot of whiskey a day. Yeah, whatevs, right? You need to get rid of the alcohol because, good grief, you consume a green pepper or half a carrot and you're already at 25 grams of carbs a day. So it's really a non-issue. And I have to agree with you. I felt fantastic. I felt wonderful.
Yeah.
I felt a lot cleaner for some reason, both physically and psychologically. So am I onto something there?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, abstinence is very, very helpful for many, many, many people. And we've helped, lots of people decide, actually, I don't want to go back to the way I was ever again. I'm happy to be alcohol free and continue that way. And that's my decision going forward. And, I can see people posting into our community on a daily basis that they're reaching 5 years, 6 years, 7 years, 8 years. And that's wonderful. But the majority of people end up thinking, well, I've done a year now. I'm going to have a drink again. And really, this comes back from my own story. didn't have any program, right? I was an oil broker in London. Part of my job was to take people out and get them smashed, and I was extremely good at it. I'd built a very big business very rapidly, hugely successful, and so I was doing a lot of entertaining, a lot of wining and dining, and it was starting to cause some issues in my life, right? Not that I was an alcoholic or nothing like that, but it was causing frustrations in my marriage. I had IBS. I never really linked these things to alcohol. I just thought, she's grumpy and that's what happens when you marry a woman, all this stuff. And so when I finally plucked up the courage to take a break from alcohol, I ended up doing a whole year. I stumbled to 90 days in the beginning, and over that year, it was amazing. I changed so much. Fitter, faster, healthier, happier, better dad, better husband, right? Grew my business by another 50% when I thought actually I was going to lose my edge as a top oil broker. And so all of these benefits, I was like, this is incredible. But I always knew that being alcohol-free was not the way I wanted to be. And it turned down to some simple things, right? If my parents told me no when I was a kid, I said, fuck you, I'm doing it anyway. So the fact is I'd been like, oh, no, you cannot drink. I know what that will do. That will build up inside me until I go out and drink the whole bar dry. And I don't want to be that person. So what I did was I decided to go out for a few drinks. And I, called a mate and said, look, I want to go out for a few drinks. I've done a year off now. And I walked up to this bar and there were, 5 people deep. And I thought, I may as well order 2 while I'm there. And the evening carried on like that, as it would. And then the following day, throwing up in the toilet with my daughter beside me crying, my wife storming out the door. And this is when I made a huge realization that abstinence does not equal control. And that's kind of been a real part of the profound journey in all of the evolution of 1 Year No Beer, of helping people to change their relationship with alcohol was, hang on a minute, we're starting to see that often people are trying to take a break or abstain from something. And interestingly, for our own podcast, I just interviewed one of the head ex-drug and alcohol researchers from the UK government. And he's published an interesting study that shows that many of these abstinence-based programs actually make our relationship with the substance worse. And this is because we're trying to use willpower and abstain and hold against it, and we're not actually dealing with the fundamental causes what create it in the first place. So that is now my purpose and meaning and mission, and what our programs are now doing is it's helping people to understand what those underlying causes are so that they can shift them.
Well, what's interesting about what you said was I can relate in the sense that when I finally had a drink after a year and a half without drinking, my body was not ready for that alcohol. All of a sudden, it was almost like I was allergic to alcohol, and I had a much harsher physiological response to just a couple drinks. Now, granted, it was red wine, and red wine will wreck you if you drink more than one glass. At least it will me. But man, I just felt sick for like 24 hours because my body said, hey, wait a minute, we weren't doing this anymore.
Totally.
Right.
Totally.
It's almost like if you've never smoked cigarettes before, the first time you smoke one, you start coughing because your lungs are like, what in holy hell are we doing to ourselves here? So your body says, hey, we stopped doing that and we shouldn't be doing that. But yet here we are, we're doing it. So guess what? We're going to be sick for a day and a half. So yeah, I saw that happen. But yeah, one of the things that I find kind of interesting and heartwarming about what you're saying is that you're not expecting people to go for the rest of their life without alcohol. And it seems like either people have control over their alcohol consumption, at least in this culture, or the pendulum has to swing the other way and they're shipped off to a 12-step program. Yeah. And you have to fear the zero, right? And whenever you have any sip of alcohol itself, you reset and you take the walk of shame, et cetera, et cetera. You said something very interesting to me pre-roll. You said, I don't use the term alcoholic.
Yep.
What's up with that? Because you may be the proverbial voice crying out in the wilderness there, Ruari.
Yeah. Well, first of all, let me start from the very important place of saying that I have the greatest respect for the institutions that have served the market of people who have needed support around their relationship with alcohol for decades. The Big Brother, AA, wonderful institutions like that. Of course, I have the utmost respect for them. However, I'm sorry, but your science is old, and we need to improve the programs that we have. And I'm one of a number of different programs that are based on new science, and the latest science. And there's a few of us out there pioneering the way here. And I think one of the big things that when it comes to that is the term actually alcoholic was coined by AA, and it goes into this part of the disease model. I don't believe in a disease model. There is no disease of alcoholism. So when you look at the research recently into this, the scientific community got together globally to debate this. And, only, I think maybe a few months ago, 6 months ago, published the study on the brain disease model. Does it exist or does it not exist? And the scientific community is entirely divided. It's like 50% either side of that coin. So we could argue this one out to the cows come home.
Well, I don't think there's any use in arguing it.
Yep.
For our purposes here. I will say this. I have heard even AA folks readily admit that alcoholism is in fact a mental illness and is classified as such, and alcohol merely being a symptom of that illness. In other words, people who are suffering from the mental illness called alcoholism tend to drink themselves into oblivion. They tend to medicate with alcohol. So in the middle there between people who are mentally ill, for lack of a better way to put it, I mean, I'm using their words, not even my own, and people who have control over their alcohol consumption and can do so moderately, are a vast swath of men who just drink too much.
We're going to get caught up in lots of minutiae here, but I agree. But again, not all people who regularly consume alcohol to a high amount have mental illness or are neurodivergent. Of course, yes. People who are neurodivergent have a much higher propensity to want to numb out, right? That is well known, ADHD, bipolar, all of those things. So this is a very, very complex area. So let's just start from this simple place. What we firmly believe, right, is that you are all powerful, that you can change your circumstances, you can rewire your brain, you can increase the availability of neuroplasticity, change your behaviors, your routines, your environment, meaning, purpose, relationships, all of those core elements that drive compulsive behavior, and you can control your relationship with any addictive substance if you change those things. And that is what our programs and our science and our belief is firmly standing on. And yeah, I think that's the part that I want to prove to people. Okay, I'm going to also say in the same state here that if you've been somebody who woke up every day and poured whiskey on the cornflakes, or you started drinking early, very early in the day, and you did it for years, you know what, our sort of programs are probably not for you. It is beyond our scope. And, there's probably a lot that needs to change in your life for you to be able to get to a place where you can control your drinking. And even the people who come into our program who are heavy drinkers, our first recommendation is always going to be to them to say, look, we found these very significant things in your life that are driving this behavior. The best way for you to continue forward is alcohol-free, whilst you continue to deal with these things. And once you've got those things into a more settled area, that's when you might think about trying to control your drinking. But the best way for people to be, I think what I said to you earlier was, abstinence does not equal control, okay? But a period of abstinence whilst doing the work, that is absolutely what will enable you to get control.
Okay, so we're on the same page here. Basically, we're talking about a cart and a horse. And you don't know which one is the cart and which one is the horse until you dig in a little and see about your social situation and where you stand in terms of your mental health in general. Okay. It seems like you're bristling a little bit at the term mental health, mental illness, but it's vernacular that people can easily understand. That's why I'm running with it.
Great.
So, okay. If you have social issues, if you have the need to be under the care of a therapist or even a psychiatrist, then your program is not the first step. Just like if people have those needs in their lives, they shouldn't come to a coach like me first. Those issues need to be sorted out before we can get on with the matter of either finding a better woman to have as a girlfriend, or any women in your life at all for that matter. And, or in your case, tackling the fact that I wish I didn't drink as much and I'd like to feel healthier. Right on?
Yes. I'm sorry to pause, and the reason why is I don't want to preclude anybody. No,
oh,
so
that's
when
fine. Sure.
So one of the things is I kind of did in my own statement earlier, but I just want to be, when we launched this originally, 8 years ago, it was to take a challenge from alcohol. We aimed at ourselves, right? Heavy drinkers, social drinkers, lifestyle drinkers, not very severe alcoholism and things like that. However, over the years, we've seen people who have very severe alcoholism come, and because they're not being labeled as stigmatized, you're always going to have a problem forever, you need to keep returning, or you're in recovery, because they've been given positive psychology tools, a group of people who are championing them on with pom-poms every day in a supportive way, they've transformed. And some of them are 8 years alcohol free now because of the positive, supportive, aspirational environment we put them in. So yeah, we're not really aimed at people with very, very, very severe drinking issues, but we have helped lots of people who have had very severe drinking issues. And I think the other cross path in there is, again, that, somebody who's in really bad state at the moment, listening to this and drinking heavily daily, you shouldn't be thinking about control. That's going to come down further down the path. Really, it's like, right, I need to have a period of alcohol free, and I've really got some work to do to discover what's going on in my life, what's driving this. And it's all these elements, right? It's partly mental health, it's relationships, it's the sense of connection you have with society, it's meaning and purpose. It's your past trauma, all the work of Dr. Gabor Mate, which we, use extensively in our programs, showing that the vast majority of our compulsive behavior comes from childhood trauma. So it's that stuff that we need to work on.
Yeah, like any other endeavor that involves delving into human psychology, it gets really complicated.
Yeah.
But I do think it's somehow refreshing to be able to unbundle drinking a lot from a disease, quote unquote, called alcoholism. Yeah. I think that's important to do.
I think so too.
Yeah. To get really practical here, one thing I've observed is a lot of people who drink a lot and would probably say to themselves, yeah, you know what? I need to drink a little less, aren't indeed the people who get up in the morning Jim Morrison style and get themselves a beer. You know what I mean? And pour it on their cornflakes. Or you were even more hardcore. You were talking about getting whiskey or bourbon and pouring it on cornflakes, which just sounds gross. But I suspect there's a huge percentage of men for whom the drinking is very situational. Did you watch the TV show Ted Lasso at all?
No, but okay. I know of it.
Yes, it's wildly popular in the United States. Basically, an American football coach gets hired to be a British football coach. And the ironic humor writes itself from there. Yeah. Well, he brings his best friend with him, does Ted Lasso, to be his, assistant coach. And they live very nearby from the football stadium and from their office they work in daily. And they've discovered British pub life. And curiously, neither one of them ever has a car for 3 seasons. Okay, so they're either working or they're in the pub, and they're just downing one beer after another at the pub constantly. But it's not like these guys are like Don Draper and Mad Men and have like a bar in their office and are constantly guzzling whiskey all day. The alcohol consumption is, for the most part, confined to that one pub setting after work, and they're just guzzling beer. Now, in my life, I tend to drink beer or something else when I'm cooking dinner, which is my release. I love to cook, I'll settle in front of the TV cooking because the design of my house lends itself to that. And I'll pour myself one beer. And then if it takes longer than 20 minutes to cook dinner, which it invariably does, it turns to 2 beers or 3. But I don't get up in the morning and drink beer. I don't go out to bars and get drunk. I almost never drink except when I'm cooking dinner. So if I were to substitute some other beverage like iced tea or something for the beer that I crack and pour myself at dinner, I would suddenly stop drinking. Does that make sense? Is that storyline common to other people as well?
Exactly. So yeah, the habit just becomes habitual. So let's just unpack a few things. You are using alcohol in that moment, right, to unwind, as an example, right? It's the end of the day. There's probably maybe reward in there. I've had a good day. I deserve one. So it's got these associations in your brain. And part of it is trying to unwind that. Professor B.J. Fogg at Stanford University, he shows that bad habits grow like weeds, right? So they start to infect different areas of the brain, the reward system, the belief system, the sense of self, your emotional regulation. So if you just go and rip a weed out, which lots of people do, they try and just abstain, rip the weed out. With weeds, if you do that, they grow back even worse. And that's the same, right? So
unless you take the root with it.
Well, the way to weed it out from the root is to cultivate it out with good habits. And so if you think about that for a second, what we have to do is identify what the true desire is of alcohol in that moment. Now, let's make the assumption that you want it to unwind. Alcohol is the worst thing for unwinding. Let me explain why. We actually use a very, very cool technological device in our coaching program where we send this to remotely monitor our participants' central nervous system. And we can show them minute by minute whether they're in fight or flight or in recovery. So it's very red when you're in fight or flight, and it's a nice green when you're in recovery. Now, in order for you, this is just very simple math. A central nervous system that does not get any recovery during the day will always need to numb out at the end of the day. So if it's not alcohol, it'll be Netflix, porn, gambling, sugar, whatever, you name it. Okay? So the only way that we can stop our desire or that drive for us to want to numb out at the end of the day from a central nervous system exhaustion is by us calming down the central nervous system. Now, there's lots of things that take into consideration, right? Stress, major factor. Higher performers. This is all we're dealing with, right? We're dealing with business owners, senior execs, leaders at the world's largest banks, celebs. That's the kind of people who come on our program. So, the stress is at the absolute highest level. So that's their daily stress. But then there's also life stress. So the stress of past memories, childhood stuff, ego, that brings in stress. Then there's stress of the environment where you work and all of those things. Then there's stress of the stuff that you put in your body. Food causes your central nervous system to have stress, right? Caffeine. What caffeine does is delay your ability for your central nervous system to get any recovery. Same as alcohol. Alcohol, in fact, just 2 units taken, so that one drink, will stop you getting significant amounts of deep sleep, which is where this deep recovery comes. So what we show people when they come on the program is that, hey, here's your graph. It's all red. It's red all day and it's red all night. Do you know what that's doing to your body and your mind? You're basically, every time you drink alcohol, you're giving your body the flu because it's 100% poison. And so your body has to process like mad, fight like hell, all the immune system going off to get rid of this poison. And that's why you get no recovery. So once again, you wake up the next day and you might feel like you've slept because a lot of people drink to sleep, right? They drink to try and go to sleep earlier, but it really ruins that deep restorative sleep. So guess what? Just like every drug, you then are in the next stage where you're on the back foot, you're tired and sluggish, and you feel like a drink again the next day. And that's exactly what alcohol does. So let me just link that back to what you said. The idea here that I'm going to have some alcohol to take the edge off. Yep, it will do that for the first 15 minutes or the first one, but then it just makes you in far worse situation. Imagine taking a headache pill, right, that gave you relief for 10 minutes, but then made it 10 times worse. That is what we have to think about when we use alcohol for a reason like that. So if we take you back to that initial question about the situation that people find themselves in, it's really key to identify underneath what is it I'm actually looking for in that situation. What's the truth? Because if you can put a good habit in that place, right, that is how you change your relationship with alcohol. That's how you remove alcohol from many of the situations when we're drinking.
Fantastic. I agree with you, and I'm not sure, again, that this is a point where opinion is even relevant. I think it's a physiological fact that alcohol wrecks your sleep.
Yeah.
I mean, it makes you fall unconscious faster, but I think you really nailed it when you said, hey, it's kind of a Pyrrhic victory. You fell asleep, but you're just more tired and worn out later. I mean, if I fall asleep having drank a couple at like midnight, I'll wake up at 3 or 4 in the morning thinking I'm ready to start my day and I haven't slept at all. Whereas if I give up the alcohol, I'll stay asleep, have a good night's sleep. And I've noticed that heart rate goes up when you're drinking and drinking too, because like you said, your body is working to clear out all these toxins. It's more stress on your body. So, I think you gave a lot of great reasons there why we should drink less.
Yeah.
From here, I'm going to mention a conversation I had with a friend of mine one time, and I'd be interested to hear your take on it.
Okay.
He and I both like bourbon. Both of us don't like being drunk. I don't like the feeling of being drunk. I don't like not having control of my faculties. I don't like blacking out and forgetting what I did the night before. All of that just seems very counter to who I am and what my preferences are in terms of living my life. And he and I were joking, man, I wish bourbon didn't make you drunk, because then we could drink a lot more of it. Right.
Yep.
And we were laughing, and then we looked at each other and went, we're the only two guys in the world who think this way. Everybody else just loves to get hammered. I don't love to get hammered. I don't like the fact that alcohol makes me drunk. I don't really have a whole lot of inclination to believe I'm trying to take an edge off. I just really like beer, and I really like bourbon. I just think they taste better. They're what I want to drink. If I were to find a non-alcoholic beer that tastes really great, and by the way, I may have just done that.
Yeah, there are some. It's amazing.
The technology, or whatever you want to call it, is fantastic lately.
Yeah. Yeah.
I found a porter, for example, that tastes shockingly close to Guinness and has no alcohol in it.
Yeah.
But it has a lot of calories. So there's a trade-off there. But I mean, are there people who just really like the taste of alcohol and wish it didn't do these abhorrent things to them physically? Most
people. Yeah, absolutely.
Really?
I mean, there's loads of people are in that spot.
You would say it's a majority of people.
I think that's a good question. I don't know if it's majority, but I think most people are like, I really enjoy the taste of, I like fine wine, or I like whiskey, or I like beer. And some of that stuff we have to kind of unpack, right? Because the brain is always on autopilot. So we built neural pathways over for a long time, and all these associations, and it's like, okay, these associations are really strong. But when you unpack that and you put them into a lab and you actually remove some of those things, and then you actually test them, they're like, oh, they can't tell the difference, and they've got no idea, or they think it's not nice. So I think a lot of this stuff is very complex. What is super interesting is the rise of alcohol-free drinks, which you've touched on, and I think it's the fastest growing beverage market in the world. It's really exciting for people to be able to go to bars and restaurants and not just have water or Coke, or and at least to have an exciting drink which tastes and mocks like it. So those alcohol-free drinks are incredibly powerful. My money is on functional drinks, because I think that is where the future really lies. And I'm excited to see how functional drinks progress.
Define functional drinks for us.
Yeah. So I think some of the early ones were just like using botanicals to try and help people relax. And so there's a few of those out there. Trip is the fastest growing single beverage in the world right now, and it's a CBD infused beer to help you relax. And then you've got Professor David Nutt, who was kicked out of the government for proving that alcohol was the world's most harmful drug. He's been working on Alcosynth now for 20 years. And the idea was that if they can produce a synthetic alcohol, which creates the sensations and the feelings and the positives of alcohol without the negatives of the hangover and the incredible impacts on society and the dangers and everything else, and on people's health, then, we're off to a massive, massive potential industry.
Oh, man, but that just has the same ring to it as like Impossible Burgers. That just sounds like it has genetic engineering written all over it.
It's all inevitable, though. I mean, alcohol costs what, $250 billion a year to the U.S. economy. Alcohol, that's just the U.S. So it's
when you're saying it costs that to the economy, is that how much we spend on alcoholic beverages, or is that how much it's costing us in work productivity, mental health, treatments, etc.?
In terms of spend, it's 1.7 trillion, I think, is global spend on alcohol. 252 is the number created by social impact, healthcare costs, the wider impact socially, so accidents and crime and all of those things pulled together, plus loss of earnings. The biggest part is loss of earnings. So loss of earnings to productivity costs is one of the largest costs to the economy globally.
Okay, so continue. I just wanted to make sure that was clear.
Yeah, completely. Absolutely. Quite right. Yeah. So the exciting part of functional drinks. So Professor David Nutt has been working on this molecule. He now has it. They're actually raising money. Very excited about that. So he has now a principal molecule that he's created that ultimately that they will license out to the alcohol industry. However, that's not there. That's a number of years ahead to get FDA regulation and all those things. What he does have now is his first version of the 2-drink buzz. And it's called Sentia. So I'm doing a nice plug for him here. He's got 2 bottles. I've tried them. It is nice. You do get a buzz. You do feel a little bit more chatty, a little bit more warm, a little bit more calmer. And there's absolutely no hangover. What he's done is he's found a way to trigger GABA, the GABA receptor inside our brain. And that's what alcohol does principally. It starts to agitate GABA receptors, and then we feel good and we feel calm and we feel relaxed and we feel connected to people. So, yeah, it's very interesting.
So the good news here is whether you like to drink because you like to get a buzz or simply because you like the taste of the stuff, you now have options you didn't have 10 years ago.
Exactly. And wait for another 10 years. It's exciting. So there's never been a better time to change your relationship with alcohol. Never. And, you know, that's the thing with this. It's without a shadow of a doubt. And this is what I'm so passionate about. It's the greatest thing you can do. It's the number one. It's like the keystone habit, right? If you're trying to get fit, trying to get healthy, trying to improve your marriage, trying to improve your relationship, trying to grow your business, be more productive, have more focus, right? Whatever it is, just get the alcohol done first, right? Remove alcohol. All the other habits fall into place. Suddenly you want to exercise. You want to eat right. You want to meditate. You have more productivity, more clarity, more energy. It's the number one thing.
Man, I love your fresh perspective on this that unbundles the whole idea of alcohol consumption from all of our preconceived notions that we've compiled over the years. I think it's fantastic.
Thank you.
I want to send these guys over to your website, which they can get to by going to mountaintoppodcast.com/beer. All right, there you go. How can you forget that? And that will take them to your website, oneyearnobeer.com, right?
Yep.
And what will they find there, Ruari, when they check out that website?
Yeah, when you land on there, you'll see a refreshing site full of positive, aspirational stuff, helping people and encouraging them to take a break from alcohol. We have our challenges, our digital challenges, which help a lot of people, and you'll find them when you click on Take the Challenge. And then if you're interested in the High Achievers program to help you optimize your physical and mental health and improve all areas of your life so that alcohol becomes irrelevant, then you just click on Complete Control, and that is our revolutionary new program.
Right on. Also, guys, when you go to mountaintoppodcast.com/Amazon, you will find Ruari Fairbairns' book, The 28-Day Alcohol-Free Challenge, at the top of the queue, especially if you're listening to this show right as it drops. Ruari Fairbairns from Scotland.
Hey.
Thank you so much for joining us today. This has been a particularly enlightening and unique podcast episode for us. And I really appreciate you and I appreciate your message. Thanks, man.
Thank you, Scott. Thank you very much for helping me share the message. And thanks for what you do as well. It's great stuff.
Oh, man, you betcha. We're all about helping men live their best lives around here. And gentlemen, if you haven't been to mountaintoppodcast.com in ages, you need to go check it out, because not only can you get in on the master classes, not only can you talk to me for free for 25 minutes about, well, what's on your mind, but also especially about how to get better women in your life or improve your relationship with the woman who is in your life. You can also download free books. You can check out the YouTube channel, and you can also check out our sponsors, Origin in Maine, The Keyport, and Hero Soap. And when you indeed get your hands on any of the fine products proffered by our 3 main sponsors, please use the coupon code MOUNTAIN10 for an additional 10% off. And until I talk to you again real soon, this is Scott McKay from X&Y Communications in San Antonio, Texas. Be good out there.
The Mountaintop Podcast is produced by X&Y Communications. All rights reserved worldwide. Be sure to visit www.mountaintoppodcast.com for show notes. And while you're there, sign up for the free X&Y Communications newsletter for men. This is Ed Roy Odom speaking for the Mountaintop Podcast.